Hey guys, in the last section, we talked about angel, we talked about church, and we talked about Thyatira. But Thyatira is such a big topic, and trade guilds are such a big topic. I want to devote this just to trade guilds. I'm going to blurt out a lot of information here. For some of you, this is going to be like, yep, you're right, check, 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 yep, got it, and all that stuff. For others of you, you may not be familiar with this. But I had mentioned in the introduction, trade guilds, you have a master, you have a journeyman, and you have apprentice. And that was a portion of the information about trade guilds. I also talked about they had deities, or deities other than the Lord, that they would serve in the trade guilds. Official deity of this trade guild, I forgot this dude's name in Thyatira. There's a guy, he runs around with a double-headed hammer on a horse. But in essence, if I were to just say sun god, that might make sense, because it could be called Zeus one place, Vulcan somewhere else. It's a false god as we know it as Christians. So that would be involved with the religious ceremonies of the trade guilds. I want to give a modern day example which will help you to understand, and also I'm going to accompany these examples with some pictures that should be very shocking to some people if you hadn't put this together. But I want to take Masons for an example. I personally believe that Masons can be traced all the way back to Babylon. When the people moved away from the ark, they came to the plain of Shinar. They settled there. And it says that they said, let us make a name for ourselves lest we be scattered among the earth. So they wanted to be as one people, not to be scattered out. God's instruction, even in Genesis, was to be fruitful and multiply and, fill the earth or replenish the earth. And by the way, replenish doesn't mean redo it, because we've already done it before. In the Genesis account, Genesis, in the Adam and Eve story, replenish just means to make plentiful. But anyway, they also mentioned that in that account, I believe it's in Genesis 6, where they had brick for stone and slime for mortar. That's King James Version stuff. Now, if you've got somebody outside here working and he's using bricks and some kind of slime or mortar, put them together, you're going to say he's a brick mason. So let's pick on Masons. Today's Masonic organization is not a brick mason organization. It is a guild or an association of people that perform many other functions. In some of those functions, as we'll see, a phrase in the letter to Thyatira, or the church in Thyatira, some of those functions know the depths of Satan. During this process, the Lord showed me the depths of Satan. And when we get to that portion in the scripture, I will tell you what the Lord showed me about the depths of Satan. But anyway, if you take the Masonry as we know it today, Masonry is a secret organization, but if you look into some of the teaching or some of the reading that's available, you're going to find out that the god of Masonry is Lucifer. Now, Lucifer is also known as the light bearer. So, if you were to say Masonry, they're over there, they're not in the church. Just as back in the days of Jezebel, just to help emphasize the phrase over there, not in part of the church, we could say that Jezebel was the daughter of the king of the Zidonians. The Zidonians were over there, and Israel was over here. The king of the Zidonians' name was Ethbaal. Anytime you hear Baal, we're talking about a false god. Ultimately, Satan. Lucifer. But he was Ethbaal, which means God on earth, or God with us. Just like you see the statue of Vulcan, it is in the human form. Ethbaal was that as well. Okay, so we say Masonry is over there, the church is over here. The Zidonians, Ethbaal is over there, Israel is here. Here's where Jezebel came in. Jezebel, the daughter of the king of the Zidonians, who was Ethbaal, Ahab married her. She came over and brought her bag of tricks of worshiping of Baal, the worship of Ashtoreth, the killing of the prophets of the Lord, etc., etc., into Israel, and it became, for the most part, illegal to follow Jehovah. I mentioned, excuse me, I mentioned that killing of the prophets of the Lord, and I just have to say this, and I'll probably mention it again, but I can't find any prophets in the Baptist church. When I do a search like Southern Baptist prophets, I get no result that tells me, oh, here is a prophet. When I do a search like Baptist prophet, I get no result. There's not a prophet that I can see that's outwardly prophesying for the Lord in those organizations. So just as the Zidonians were over there having their religion, and the Masons are over there having their religion, Jezebel brought Baal and Asherah worship into the church and killed the prophets of the Lord. Something's happened, and when I mention Baptists, I mention them because I know most about them. I'm talking about denominations as a whole. For some reason, there's no prophets. Just as in the time of Jezebel, she killed the prophets. Well, there's an absence of prophets today. But Paul says, and God gave some apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, some teachers. But suddenly we see that there's a missing link. The prophets are missing, just as in they came up missing in Israel. So I find that very interesting. Okay, back on track. The trade guilds had the foreign deity. Now, the foreign deity normally had a symbol. You can look at the symbol of Vulcan. I'll show you a picture of him. That would be maybe the deity of some trade guild or whatever. But today I found in my hometown some symbols that represent gods. This one picture, it's in the Delano Park in Decatur, Alabama. It's a picture of an atlas. And the atlas is on a little pedestal put together with stone and mortar, I think. Now, the atlas is a very interesting thing because you can see, and I'll throw this picture up, in Rockefeller Center, you can see the atlas, and I think it's Prometheus. In various other locations around, you can see the atlas. Even, and this is very critical, The Devil's Daughter, it was a movie, The Devil's Daughter, the guy who represented the most senior person in a devil-worshipping cult had an atlas sitting on his desk in that movie. Now, I've seen it in the Wild Wild West series from the 60s, that series. And also I've seen it in A Man from U.N.C.L.E., which the Lord took me around, and I guess he was just showing me these different things. Now, Atlas would be a symbol for the sun god or the God on earth, just as Ethbel was God on earth. And it's interesting that the top vertebrae of your spinal column is called the atlas vertebrae. It holds your head. So now you start associating atlas with knowledge. And it's interesting that it's the 33rd vertebrae. And in masonry, you have 33 degrees. And once you're at the 33rd degree, you get some honor, some title. But I would venture to guess it would also be associated with the atlas and the God on earth type status. I'm not a Mason. I'm just putting this together as I see it coming at me and all that stuff. So that's a little about the atlas in Delano Park. The other thing that I found was interesting was a seating arrangement there shaped into the form of a crescent moon or a crescent shape. Now the crescent shape or the crescent moon, you can see it on various flags. I think one of the Carolinas has it on their flag. Islam uses it. But it honestly, it represents the female deity. In old times with Nimrod in Babylon, he had a wife named Semiramis. She's I guess you could say she would be the mother of all this in the female side. Today, you might recognize her as Mary, Mother of God, the Mother Goddess, Mother Earth. In Paul's time, they worship in Ephesus, they worship Diana. It's all the same. Because of Babel, everybody's got a name, but it's the same deity. Well, I found these two in the Rose Garden in Delano Park. I found the Atlas, and also I found the crescent moon. And then what was interesting, like if the Atlas and the crescent moon were to unite once again, maybe as back in the day Semiramis said she had an immaculate conception and had a son. Right in between them, I found this mushroom shape, and I'm going to put it on the screen there. That little mushroom shape that I've outlined there, I saw that shape in a dream, and I got the video on here. Like it's like alien invasion. In the dream that I had for the alien invasion, I saw that shape on a spaceship. And I also saw that same shape if you look at the old movie Metropolis. The lady who portrayed Babylon, the mother of all harlots, she wore that shape on her head. So if you follow these symbols, I'm going to call them trace evidence, as a forensic scientist would normally do. As you follow that, you start to see there's connections. You know, where you see this, you may see that, or it's always shaped like this. The garden's done like this. There's a circle. So you start seeing the influence of a cult. And the cult, I'm not saying necessarily evil bad, although there are evil bad, but occult just means hidden. It's stuff, you see the symbol, you don't know anything about it. You're just a little innocent person, you have no clue. But it's right there in front of you, right before your very eyes. It's all over your national parks. I went to Vicksburg recently. Tons of idolatry in Vicksburg. Okay, having said that, I want to show you some other images from denominations. The first one here that I'm going to show you is from the Baptist Press. And I want you to look right there on top of the Bible. There's an atlas. Now, we could say it's a globe, but if it was the globe, it would have the continents represented and, you know, be more solid. But it just got the latitudinal and longitudinal lines. I find it very interesting that trade guilds had a deity other than Jehovah, and the symbol at the Baptist Press connects with Atlas, which we know to be God with us, like not like Emmanuel, but Baal on earth, God on earth, man type. And also the symbol on the Southern Baptist web page, same symbol. And then when you do a look into it, you'll find that the Southern Baptists are very big on teaching the pre-tribulation rapture theory. Started out with a girl named Margaret MacDonald. Came along, John Darby listened to her and moved along with it. Then a guy named Schofield got a hold of it, put it in his Bible notes, and then the president who studied with Schofield of Dallas Theological Seminary, actually the founder of Dallas Theological Seminary, began that seminary. So and the big, huge word that nobody wants to spell is dispensationalism or something like that. That's used very frequently in Dallas Theological Seminary, and also very frequently in the Baptist Trade Guild. And I could say Baptist Association because they've got their associations everywhere, like, in every county, which leads us to another point after this. But anyway, look at this picture of Dallas Theological Seminary. If you look up there at the top left, there is a torch. Now, we saw the atlas. We saw it on the Baptist websites. That's the male deity, the sun god, Nimrod, Ethbaal, God with us, or God on earth. And then we saw the crescent moon, and now we see this torch. And we look at that torch and we go, my goodness, Lady Liberty holds the same torch in New York Harbor. And that's the female side of the deity. So that crescent moon-shaped bench seating and that torch are one and the same. It's a representation of the female deity. And I have to tell you that I'm leaning, God hadn't spoken to me and said this, but I'm leaning towards saying Satan is male, Lucifer is female. And that Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor is a representation of Lucifer, the female deity of the occult religions. Brought to you by the Masons. So that was that part. And there was one other thing that I wanted to make the connection. Okay. Association. I talked about the Baptist Association. You got the United Methodist Association. I was just in Jasper, Alabama, right across from Masonic Hall in Jasper, Alabama, is a United Methodist Church. Both buildings are the same architecture. Now, I'm just saying it, okay? In Moulton, Alabama, there is the Muscle Shoals Baptist Association, right next door to Masonic Hall. Both same kind of bricks, almost like the bricks were bought from the same lot number on adjoining properties. Just west of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Port Allen, Louisiana, you see a Masonic Hall and a Baptist church side by side. There was probably one other, I forgot. I don't have my pictures with me. Anyway, you start to see a rhyme and reason. You've got trade guild, masonry, trade guild, denomination. You got Baptist Association beside Masonic halls. Albert Pike, he was one of the most prolific writers, I guess, of masonry, or one of the big boys. They've got he's got places named after him in Washington, D.C. He basically said, the god of masonry is Lucifer. But anyway, you start to be the understanding of the deity within the trade guilds start to become a little more apparent, and the associations between symbols start to become a little more apparent. And when you start seeing these symbols on websites for what you think is just cute little window dressing, in the occult world, they mean something. I'll give you another point. 6th Avenue Church of God, Decatur, Alabama, have the yin yang symbol in their website. The pastor actually did a series of messages talking about the duality of God, dualism. And I'm going to tell you, the only way you come to know that phrase or that word is through occult. Yin yang, the way you contact with the occult, it has nothing to do with God or anything like that. So anyway, Thyatira, then trade guilds. And these trade guilds, they operate the same. The apprentices don't know that much. The apprentices would actually defend a trade guild out of lack of knowledge. In Masonry, you have the first 3 levels are called the Blue Lodge. Those are the public servants, just to respect. They're the guys that would sit beside you in the church and say, "Man, I love it. It's just great fellowship," and da 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 da. They never just type in on the computer and see what the big boys say about it. And the same thing can happen in denominations. Just a person wanting to learn about the Lord and wanting to do good and all this stuff, he would defend the denomination, which brings me to a great point. Something that the Lord showed me quite a while back. He gave me a dream where my son and I escaped from prison. We literally flew with our arms out of prison and escaped mortar fire that was coming at us, only to get to a point to where we asked Hitler to treat one of my wounds. Now, I came to understand afterwards that was God showing me in the churches today, you people that are hungry, you are searching for the light and all that stuff, and you're turning to a pastor who you put your trust in, is like turning to Hitler. He built the prison, he runs the prison, and you're a prisoner. And I'm telling you, having been in that system, denomination system, in the Baptist church, and having now been out and solely relying on the Lord and those others who are also solely relying on the Lord, it's daylight and dark. You can be a prisoner and defend the prison warden, just as was demonstrated with Hitler. So anyway, I'm going to go, and that gets us through that first little phrase, and to the angel of the church in Thyatira, write. And I think that'll conclude that whole phrase. Thank you.